Good afternoon to you, dear viewers of High Television. Welcome you on board Nature's Corner right here, which is being aired on High Television every Thursdays at from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. with me, Jabi Katie. Of course, Nature's Corner, we come here every time to discuss with you and tell you what is making news in the environmental sphere, and also to inform you as to what are the things that are happening that are affecting you and I, and how we can contribute and join forces together to solve some of these environmental issues. We're all about connecting you with nature and ensuring that we have an environmental conscious population. And of course, this program promises to be interesting just as every other edition, as today we shall be paying focus and zooming in on the aspect of illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing. Yes, you may be wondering, dear viewers on the house, which one is that now? And of course, we shall have the time to explain it to you. What about this moment in this edition of the program, as we tell you what is going wrong within the coastal management system in the country is concerned to fisheries, and how it is affecting both the artisanal community and the ecosystem at large, and in the long run how it is affecting you and I. We take on this jingle break. When we come back, we get into the program in total. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're just in time to continue the program, and if you're just joining us, we're just getting started, and it's a pleasure to have your company for the program Nature's Corner, which is aired on High Television every Thursday as from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And today we shall be discussing about illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing, as earlier highlighted. But just before we dive into that, you know, it's a rubric that whenever we come here, we try to get you informed as to what is making news in Cameroon, Africa, and the world at large is concerned to the environment. And right about now, we start in Zimbabwe, where they are suffering from drought issues, which is causing food insecurity. According to government authorities in Zimbabwe, more than half of Zimbabwe's population will need food aid this year, following a devastating drought that led to widespread crop failure, as humanitarian organizations seek funding to save many from hunger. The country's cabinet revealed on Tuesday, and about 6 million people in rural areas and 1.7 million people in urban areas in Zimbabwe will require assistance, according to the Zimbabwe Livelihood Assessment Committee. And it should be noted that Zimbabwe is among the worst hit countries by drought in Southern Africa, with Zambia and Malawi also facing food shortages this year. This is Zimbabwe's worst drought in 40 years, according to the government. The latest crop assessment presented to the cabinet of Zimbabwe also revised upwards Zimbabwe's maize production deficit to 77% from last week's prediction. And this just goes to show how the issue of drought is affecting the people of Zimbabwe, which most scientists would like the term would likely link to climate change, as we raise more concerns for climate change, and that we take more actions towards solving this problem. And away from Zimbabwe, we move to Kenya, where persistent flooding situations throughout the country, Kenya, is causing havoc. As about now, at least 5 persons are still missing in landslide in central Kenya, as a landslide that followed heavy rain in central Kenya has swept away at least 5 people. Residents said on Wednesday, and the Red Cross said that its workers will assist in the rescue effort. The landslide occurred in Kimende Escarpment in Kiambu County, in the north capital of Nairobi, and of course the area has been cordoned off and declared a danger zone area. And we've had a report of family members who are in pain and who are sad over the fact that they are yet to see their loved ones. We, at this moment, we wish that the wish recovery for the people of Kenya. It should be noted that since 2023, Kenya Kenya has been recording a lot of disasters, from flood to landslide, which has destroyed homes, farmland, bridges, roads, and even killed persons. And of course, from Zimbabwe, we move over to Indonesia as a death toll rises to 67 from a flooding situation which happened in Indonesia recently, and of course 20 persons are still missing. And families in Indonesia are mourning those who have died in that part of the world. And the number of people killed by flash floods and mudslides over the weekend in Indonesia has risen to 67, according to authorities, and 20 are still missing. Authorities revealed this on Thursday, and the government plans to relocate survivors to safer areas. And we hope that the people of Indonesia can recover today's flooding situations, and these just resonate the call for countries across the globe to reinforce efforts towards fighting issues of climate change and to protect the environment. And so we all work towards environmental preservation. We take on a jingle break. When we come back, we get into our topic of conversation, which is on illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. When we come back, you get to find out more what this is and how it is affecting you and I. Welcome back, fervent viewers of High Television. You're still on to the program Nature's Corner of High Television with me, Jabi Kitty. And as earlier reiterated, today we shall be talking about the situation of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing in Cameroon and Africa at large, commonly called IUU fishing. And we shall be looking at how it is affecting artisanal fishermen, affecting the community at large, and even the ecosystem. And just before we get to that, we also remind you that we have a guest in the pipeline, as we shall be talking to Dr. Rebecca from the Center for Maritime Laws and Security in Ghana, who shall be telling us about the situation of IUU fishing in Africa and the dangers it brings. But just before we get to Dr. Rebecca, let's get to understand the situation of IUU fishing in Cameroon, how it is affecting artisanal fishermen and the community at large. Through this documentary, Agony of the Blue, produced by me, Jabi Kitty, we get to visit fishermen at fishermen in Kribi will get to tell us how it is affecting them and how they're struggling to cope and survive from the situation of IUU fishing, as how foreign vessels and fishing trawlers are taking more fishes from the waters. And Dr. Rebecca. People from 4 different countries meet here every day. Tied by the bond of the deep waters, the ocean has made them brothers. The Bakadher Fishing Hall in the Boamanga neighborhood in Kribi, Cameroon, plays host to a fishing community of Ghanaians, Nigerians, Beninois, and Cameroonians.
Nigeria na me, Benin na me, Togolese na Ghanaian na me. Even na Benin we go, I will see talk like Benin. If they are there, now we.
Whenever they meet, there is one wish: for the ocean to be friendly, so they can return to their respective families as heroes.
Je suis marié officiellement avec 3 enfants à la maison. Je les envoie à l'école avec la pêche. Avec cette pêche, c'est là qu'on parvient à mener nos enfants à l'hôpital, à se nourrir, à aider même à payer l'électricité, à payer les loyers. 7 ans dans la pêche. Moi, je suis né dans l'eau. Quand je dis dans l'eau, ça veut dire que je suis né au village, grandi au village. On m'a élevé avec la pêche. Parce que c'est même avec la pêche que mes parents m'ont envoyé à l'école.
At sunrise, people from different communities gather here, scrambling to get the best and biggest fish from the early morning's catch. A perfect opportunity for traders to make some good cash.
Moi, j'ai les enfants, les petits-enfants. Je suis même déjà jusqu'à la troisième génération. Ceux qui ne sont pas en mariage, surtout quand j'ai seulement les filles. Il y a d'autres qui sont même déjà à l'université à cause de ça. Rien que pour vendre le poisson là. Je suis ici au débarcadère depuis 2014. Parce qu'avant, j'étais au village.
If one cannot earn from the fish trade directly, running errands for the fish masters could be another way.
Mais les sociétés qui recrutent les jeunes, je dis qu'ils sont peu. Et pour annuler le banditisme au Cameroun, c'est par rapport à ce genre de choses qu'on fait. Parce que dans une bureau nourrit au moins 4 à 5 familles qui portent au moins plus de 50 personnes. Ça veut dire qu'il y a d'abord 50 personnes qui deviennent bandits.
It may seem to be a cry of the artisanal fishing community for now, but the effects are universal and long-lasting.
The impact will last even many years after the fishing has been carried out. Fishing near the mangroves, the channels, the corals is destroying the habitat where the fish used to go and reproduce. It's catching the juveniles which were supposed to grow and become the fish that will be caught by the same fishermen if they are legalized, if they are doing their work normally.
How then can we preserve our waters and its species and ensure community resilience?
What we want to solve as a problem is that we have to know where the fish products come from. Where did they fish them? Who is fishing them? Where is they landing the fish before they export them? The vessels that are operating in Cameroon should be able to explain, to trace where they are, wherever they fish, so that they can know what exactly they are doing in those countries, be in Cameroon or out of Cameroon.
Sensitize people, sensitize the companies involved on IUU fishing to understand the importance of marine resources and the negative effect of their action on the sea. We also need to sensitize the local fishermen to do not be afraid of reporting the case of IUU fishing that they face. I work at AMCO, where we have developed the application called Siren, which can help the local fishermen to report the sightings of interaction between them and the industrial fishing.
As the marine world strives for accountability of all stakeholders, the artisanal fishermen should also understand their contribution to illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing.
Yeah, IUU fishing is not only the issue of industrial fishing, because when they say illegal, it concerns also the artisanal fishermen that are not using the legal size of net, that are not fishing in the normal place. The use of chemical, for instance, is forbidden, is actually deeply punished. The fishermen should avoid using the small size net and use instead the large size nets.
You're just from watching the documentary Agony of the Blue, produced here in Cameroon, which reviews and explores the situation of IU fishing in Cameroon and how it is affecting the artisanal community. And of course, that documentary mostly featured fishermen from Kribi, especially from the Bakadere fishing hub over there in Kribi, and revealing to us how the issue of foreign vessels which are in Cameroonian waters, how they are penetrating into our waters and affecting the fishermen. And what about now? We're about to have more details about this particular situation of IU fishing from Dr. Rebecca Kierawa Esamwa. Hopefully I pronounced the name right. Dr. Rebecca Kierawa Esamwa, who is a senior researcher and programs manager at the Center for Maritime Laws and Security. Just I think last week, that's on the 7th of May, Dr. Rebecca was here in Cameroon, particularly in Douala, alongside the team of the Center for Maritime Laws and Security, alongside the Center for Coastal Management and University of Cape Coast. And they were here to talk about the issues of IU fishing to journalists and the civil society actors to drill them more on the impact of IU fishing and how they can better report on this situation. So we caught up with Dr. Rebecca to get details about this particular situation and to get a cross-comparative study from the African perspective. Aside Cameroon, other African countries also facing situations as these. And what about now? We have Dr. Rebecca on standby, who is about to talk to us just about this moment. Hello to you, Dr. Rebecca. It's a pleasure to have you on board. Please tell us detailing what brings you to Cameroon.
Well, thank you very much. I am Dr. Rebecca Chirowa Esamwa, a senior research officer and programs manager at the Center for Maritime Law and Security Africa, CEMLAWS Africa, based in Accra, Ghana. And I part of the working team co-implementing this project being funded by the Department of State, U.S. Embassy in Accra. The project is titled Promoting Local Capacity to Address the Negative Impacts of Foreign Fishing Vessels in the Gulf of Guinea and Mauritania. For that reason, 7 focus countries have been selected for the project: Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Cameroon, Senegal, Sierra Leone, of course Ghana, Mauritania. Among these 7 countries, we realize common issues of IUU fishing, particularly where there's foreign participation in the industrial sector. Now, IUU, as we know it, and you've rightly said, illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing is a menace. And so through this project, we're hoping to highlight more of the impacts of IUU fishing, and particularly to improve our reportage through media, CSOs, and community actors. Now, IUU also is on the rampant because of some gaps in our enforcement and monitoring and control of the space. So certainly these are areas that we are focusing on this 2-year project that is being funded by the Department of State, U.S. Embassy.
Well, we hope you've had a pleasant stay so far in Cameroon. But again, we may be tempted to ask, why did Cameroon feature on the list? We understand that you and your team are working in countries as Senegal, Mauritania, Ghana, and Cameroon just featured on the list. Why did you take interest in Cameroon? What was peculiar about the situation of IUU fishing in Cameroon?
Yes, so Cameroon is really of interest to the U.S. Embassy, I must say. Why? Because Cameroon's situation, unlike all the other West African countries I've mentioned and Mauritania, Cameroon's situation tends to speak of a country that is doing so much, but then there's very little information being shared. And so it means that on the government level, a lot is being done, but then there's a gap in sharing the information, therefore not getting the support that they need from media, from all other community actors and important stakeholders in the space. So we're hoping that through this project, we can give the government that platform to share what they are doing on governance and management of the sector, and also to take feedback, because it's important. Information share is both ways. You are sharing the information and you are ready to accept feedback on how to improve systems. So that is where Cameroon makes it, Cameroon's addition to the focus country makes it unique to understand the Cameroon situation. Of course, in our preliminary study, we realized that Cameroon is yet to have a fisheries management plan. But then, of course, Cameroon has a system that seems to be working when it comes to some regards. So how can we learn lessons from all of these other countries to improve Cameroon's efforts in clamping down on IUU fishing?
Indeed, there needs to be visibility on the side of every stakeholder, both the government and the civil society actors and journalists. Each side has to be aware of the work and efforts that they are putting in their individual levels. But then again, let's shift back to the core of IUU fishing. We have just watched the documentary Agony of the Blue, which talks about the foreign vessels in the coast of Cameroon, particularly in the Kribi coastline. But what about now? I would want to know if this situation is also common in other African countries. Surely it should be common. That's why you are moving from Senegal, Mauritania, the seven countries with which you're working with. What is the situation of IUU fishing that you've seen in these other countries aside Cameroon, and what dangers is it bringing to the community and the ecosystem at large?
Yes. So IUU fishing, of course, first affects food security, and that is very important to all of us for our sustainability. It affects food security because I mentioned this issue of dumping. In order not to be given a fine or penalty, um, industrial vessels that have no surveillance or have no control will dump fish that ordinarily is meant for the masses. And so food security is very important, and IUU fishing really is a threat to food security. Also, it's a threat to environmental sustainability. Very important spawning and growing areas, grounds for fish are being encroached on. It also affects the general economy of coastal communities because and coastal nations. Why? Because you don't even know how much is in there and how much is being taken. Especially if our research institutions, the work they do, is not brought on the decision table during discussions. So our research institutions and universities are doing so much work, but it's sitting on the shelves and it's not being brought when it comes to informing policy. So these are the kind of gaps we want to bridge so that you have the science informing policy. And of course, IUU affects generally not just the livelihoods, but it affects the prosperity of the inhabitants. Think about the other indirectly affected communities, those that depend on the indirect forms of fishing. And these are issues that we want to address when it comes to the distant water fishing vessels project.
Dear listeners, if you're still on to Nature's Corner, we are on and we are talking about illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing right here on the program Nature's Corner over High Television, wherein fishing trawlers, commercial fishing vessels, they encroach our waters and, of course, overexploit the fish resources and sometimes go beyond the EEZ zone or the geographical mappings that they have, which affect community members, as Dr. Rebecca has just mentioned. Of course, Dr. Rebecca Kerewa Samoa is our guest for today, a senior researcher and programs manager from the Center for Maritime Laws and Security. She's just spoken about the dangers of IUU fishing to the African community at large. Dr. Rebecca, you've mentioned food security, you've mentioned destruction of corals and other species habitats in the ocean. Having in mind these particular problems that are being caused by IUU fishing, where do we go from here? What is a way forward? What solutions can you propose towards solving this problem?
Yes, so we have lessons, like I said, learned from the 7 countries, and Cameroon being the country that we've just been welcomed to on the project. For instance, if you take countries like Benin and Cote d'Ivoire, there really is really is no cohesion. There's no common platform to allow the media or even the community to meet administration. So because of that, that lack of communication, whether it's because of an agenda building that doesn't include the fisheries yet, it makes it difficult to have an inclusive governance process. And then in other countries like Senegal, for instance, there are some very great initiatives where the community or the fishers help in surveillance, help in control. Why? Because they are part of a participatory process to ensure that out there at sea, the right thing is being done. Of course, it hasn't been legally put on paper, but then it's ongoing where the community supports the MCS division in controlling what happens out there at sea. Then, of course, like I mentioned for Ghana, where we are clamping down on transshipment. However, the gear directive is even helping more. And then the pilot phase of the electronic monitoring system is also going to support the process of MCS and enforcement. And then in Senegal, in Sierra Leone, I beg your pardon, in Sierra Leone, we are seeing that the media is well equipped. They crave for more capacity building, and they are calling for more the share of information, access to information, I should put it, to some of the issues that happen out there at sea, because they are not there, but then they would want to know what is happening so that they can be the mouthpiece to the people. So CEMLAWS and the Center for Coastal Management from the University of Cape Coast, who are co-implementing this project with partners in all the 7 countries, have taken a stance when it comes to research. So together with experts, assessments are being undertaken, meetings are being held to, one, find the gaps in MCS capacity and functionality, how to therefore train MCS officials up to speed, and where there's a need for technological advancement to highlight this. And also publishing more of policy briefs. In Ghana, quite recently, we put out a policy brief on beneficial ownership. The topic is loosely understood, and there was a need to enhance understanding of beneficial ownership and what it means, or the losses that come with it when it comes to fronting by foreigners. So through our policy briefs, through our research, working with closely with country experts, we expect that we can highlight some of these gaps and therefore provide recommendations. And that is why it is important to have all of you on board, media people. We need community actors. We need the CSOs on board to understand what it really means for foreign participation in our industrial sector. And then the last thing that we are doing before we get to meet our policy and regulatory agencies is to propose a blueprint. How can we now locally own the industrial sector space as Africans, as looking at West Africa in this case, and then of course Cameroon being Central Africa? How can we locally own the industrial sector? Because we believe that we are best to sustainably use the resource. So it's a business. How can we bring in the corporate entities to invest in locally owning the industrial sector, the vessels, the operations? Do we need capacity when it comes to captains, so that we don't have our people just occupy low as deckhands, for instance, on these vessels, but then they actually man the vessels and control the vessels and then reap in the benefits back into our economies. So these are the things that we are hoping to do through CEMLAWS and the University of Cape Coast Center for Coastal Management, as we highlight the gaps in governance and management of the fishery sector.
All right, hopefully with these solutions, it can be implemented so we get rid or we curb the rate of illegal fishing in the African waters. But let's stay with the solutions and let's borrow from Ghana at this point in time. Dr. Rebecca, we are all aware that Cameroon has received a red card from the European Union banning fish export into the European Union countries, fish import rather into European Union countries. And of course, just before this red card was put in place, Cameroon first received a yellow card in 2021, which after we failed to comply with the rules and regulations governing fishing, we received the red card. But just as Cameroon, Ghana had once received a yellow card, but your country did not earn a red card. So how was Ghana able to maneuver the situation of the yellow card? Tell us, probably we could pick lessons from Ghana and implement it in Cameroon to move away from this red card situation.
Yes, thank you very much. In Ghana, we don't have a red card, fortunately. Over some time, we were issued a yellow card, and for which reason we have developed and improved our fisheries management plan to meet the requirements of the EU. Now, in the fisheries management plan, among others, it's the management of course, the sector, and also to highlight how we can improve the sector sustainably and also to improve the livelihoods of our people. There in the management plan is the co-management, and therefore working hand in hand with communities, small-scale fishers, in ensuring that we are taking exactly what we are supposed to take out of the system. So we haven't been issued a red card, like I said, fortunately. However, we are trying to improve our surveillance of the industrial sector space. Quite recently, what happened is that a gear directive by the Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development in Ghana, was to clamp down on illegal gears. Now we realize that it's some use of these smaller meshes. That means that there is more catches of the pelagic fish that is supposed to be put aside or left, for that matter, for small-scale fishes. And then because the industrial fishers don't want to be caught in the act, they dump. And that is what we don't want, the unreported part, the dumping of fish. So in Ghana, there's practically no transshipment at this point that has been clamped down on. And also because of the gear directive, we are now improving more on catches by the industrial sector. So the gear directive has gone a long way. And then there is an aspect that has improved even further our association with other countries. Why? Because there's a piloting of an electronic monitoring system on all vessels. Of course, we've just started on a low scale with 3 vessels, and it has really shown that by monitoring, you can ensure that the right thing is being done out there, so that the electronic monitoring system acts as the eyes of the government. Where we are not able to have the observers, we want to be sure that the electronic monitoring system is actually the eye of the government and ensuring that the right things are done. So this is what is happening in Ghana now, and we really are applauding the minister for ensuring that the gear directive is being met, for which reason some vessels have already left the shores of our country.
Well, hopefully that Cameroon tries to see which of these they can implement to escape the situation, not only to uplift the ban, the red card from the European Union, but also to alleviate the situation of IU fishing in Cameroon and also protect the artisanal fishermen, because they are one of the persons who bear the burden of it the most. And of course, we hope to see one day where this ban is uplifted and fish products from Cameroon can be exported into European Union countries once more. But aside mechanisms implemented in Ghana, you, alongside your team at SEMLOS, you've worked in other countries as Senegal, Mauritania, and Sierra Leone. What are some of the mechanisms in these other countries aside Ghana that they are putting in place that you think that maybe Cameroon or Ghana or any other country can copy, or maybe copy and paste, copy and improve rather, to emulate so as to improve the fishery sector?
Yes, so I think I've mentioned some already, but certainly for Ghana, for instance, the gear directive clearly spelling out what type of gear, the mesh sizes of the industrial sector, cut out almost 50% of the vessels that were doing the wrong things, that is using the wrong mesh sizes out there. So a gear directive is certainly one way to go, and this has to be certainly supported strongly by administration and ensuring that even when it comes to registering, like our Ghana Maritime Authority is doing, they are very stringent in ensuring that you are coming in with the right requirements as a vessel that wants to fish within our waters. Then also, I mentioned the Senegal case of participatory surveillance, where together with the community, they work together to, as it were, police the waters, because there is insufficient personnel when it comes to administration, and so working together with the community is certainly a good way to go. And then one thing that would also want Cameroon to come on board, having a one voice among reporters, having one voice and not respectfully speaking to a matter. Something that came up strongly in Mauritania was the fact that the media were doing their work but in silos. So there was a need to tie these scattered efforts together, so that one voice means that you need to listen to us. We are saying this and we want to see some action. And so these are some of the lessons that we've learned from the countries. And we believe that if Cameroon gets on board and even improves further the efforts they're already making, you are already making, it would really get the attention of government and then bring them their attention to the fact that these have to be addressed. Were doing their work patterns, and we believe that if Cameroon gets on board and even improves further the efforts they're already making, you are already making, it would really...
We hope that we still have you on board, Dr. Rebecca, and thank you very much for speaking to us. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been speaking with Dr. Rebecca Kierewa Esamwa, a senior researcher and programs manager at the Center for Maritime Laws and Security, CEMLAWS, in Ghana. And she was here in Cameroon a few days back alongside a team from the Center for Coastal Management at the University of Cape Coast, where they did train some journalists and civil society actors on IU fishing in partnership with the African Marine Mammal Conservation Organization. Dr. Rebecca, it's been a pleasure having you. But just before we take leave of you, any concluding words to researchers, civil society actors, journalists, and the stakeholders in the fishery sectors as a whole?
Thank you very much. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to add my voice to this agenda of combating IUU fishing and also reducing foreign influence in our industrial sector. I would advise and I would encourage that, as we've seen, and I think Cameroon's show up at this particular workshop has been bigger than other countries. In other countries, we sometimes even have to call to remind them that, you know, the event is coming up. But the room is full, and that shows the commitment of the media, the community actors, and the CSOs that have been invited for this skills training. And so we are hoping that we can sustain the effort. I mentioned also during my presentation that the WhatsApp platforms that have been created, other engagement platforms that have been created, should be open such that issues can be discussed, including even some government personnel, so that they can highlight more on areas that they need support for. And so these are the platforms that we're hoping that after today we can keep going and then keep the conversation as open and as inclusive as possible, getting to the right ears and then requiring the address that we're all looking for. And I would also want to really thank you once again for the patience, because we realize that it's not easy to follow up on subjects like this that have no monetary incentives, if I can put it that way. These industrial sector vessels are always advancing when it comes to technologies. And so we are hoping that our media, our journalists and reporters would equally be updates with some of these advancements so that they can catch up with information. And you have been You have been very, very gracious in allowing me to speak on your platform. Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure talking with you, Dr. Rebecca. We do hope you have a nice day there as you be in Ghana and you continue to put in more effort towards improving the fishery sector in the country and in Africa at large. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you're still onto the program Nature's Corner, and all through we have been talking about IU fishing in Cameroon and Africa at large. In the beginning of the program, we told you about drought in Zimbabwe, which is causing food insecurity. We also told you about landslides in Kenya, which has damaged properties with about 5% missing. We also told you about the increasing number of the death toll in Indonesia due to flooding situations. And of course, from there, we took you to Kribi, where we spoke with artisanal fishermen in the town of Kribi, where they spoke to us about how fishing trawlers and fishing vessels are disturbing their work and of course reducing their catch, and how it is also affecting their psychological well-being. And away from that, we also had a talk with Dr. Rebecca Kerera from Semlos, Ghana, who gave us a broader perspective to the issue of IU fishing away from the Cameroonian corridors. She took us to the African corridors from to Ghana, Senegal, Sierra Leone, and Mauritania. And it is on this note that we are slowly bidding farewell and drawing the curtains for today's edition of the program Nature's Corner. And just before we leave, I just want to reiterate to us watching right now, especially to the artisanal fishermen, that it is true that we have paid much emphasis on the fishing vessels, the fishing trawlers, but we should also know that we, the artisanal fishermen, also have a role to play towards improving the fishery sectors so that we don't over-exploit our fishing resources. Do not use the small tiny holes, the nets with small tiny holes, and also do not throw of chemicals into the ocean just because you want to have a good catch. The gamalins and whatever fertilizers that we do throw, we should stop. We should refrain from doing that because it also goes as far to deteriorate the fishing sector and, of course, to overexploit the fishes in the waters. On this note, I am slowly bidding you farewell. Thanking you for watching. It has been a pleasure to have your company. Of course, we'll not be here to speak every Thursday, 3 p.m. right up to 4 p.m. if you're not there to listen. And just to remind you that Nature's Corner is aired on High Television every Thursdays as from 3 p.m. with me, Jabi Kitty. I want to applaud Claudine Tamfu for her production expertise. She was in charge of the technical domain for today's edition of the program. And of course, we've had moral support from Aisha Mbeng, Sunita Nguni, Larry Tengene. We've had supervision from the editor-in-chief, Aditi Kamilike, and general supervision from the manager of High Television, Ayok Eno Humphrey. And what about now? We urge you to stay glued to other interesting programs from High Television. It's bye-bye from my end. Stay safe and do well to be environmental conscious.